Recording in progress.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kirsten Simonton. We're here this morning for our first kind of update for the PFMC week down here in Foster City. Thank you for everybody joining us this morning. Really appreciate it. A couple of things to go over today. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. The internet's been kind of funky in this room. So a couple things that we wanted to go over today. So I guess the biggest updates are that since we left north of Falcon 2, there have been a couple of model runs. The first one just updated some northern fisheries. The second one that we did made some changes to both Area 5 in the winter and Area 10 in the summer. The Area 5 change went from a quota of 1750 down to 1400, which saved about 3 Sac Springs. The second change was Area 10 summer went from a quota of 5216 down to 4000, and that saved 1.7 stilly impacts. So those are the two big updates there. The most recent update that we've had was basically settling in on some ocean options. It's basically the high ocean option that was passed around kind of in the last set of updates. So the high ocean option is 85K for non-treaty and 50K for treaty. Again, that's really similar to the high ocean option that was presented most recently at the meetings. The biggest thing to talk about there is that the LCN tules are still at 39.1%. So more shaping is necessary for that ocean option. And then the last thing I want to mention for the current model runs that have been happening are that we still need to do a little bit more shaping because we need to add in a non-retention piece for the Area 5 and 6 October coho fishery that's been extended, which will take about 0.5 stilly mortalities. So that's kind of setting up some of the discussions that are going to go into this week. Derek, if I missed anything, feel free to jump in and let me know.
Nope, that was all good, Kirsten.
Okay. So are there any questions about any of the modeling efforts that have been done the last couple of days before we kind of jump into some things to kind of we want to lay on the table for everybody today? All right, I don't see any hands. So the biggest thing that we wanted to mention today that's going to set up some of the kind of discussions moving forward is there has been a proposal brought forward for a small winter fishery in Area 7. This fishery has been proposed by some of the constituents. Basically, would have a small quota of about 600 fish. We think that will get us maybe one or between 2 and 3 days of fishing in the winter. That would kind of be really heavily monitored. So basically where it comes down to for shaping this fishery is that if we did move forward with proposing this winter fishery in Area 7, those impacts would come out of the Area 7 summer fishery. So the trade-off there would be a decrease in the Area 7 summer quota from about a little bit over 2,100 last year was 1,800. And then this year with the winter fishery, it would be 1,750. So it would be a reduction in the summer fishery from last year. So those are kind of some of the things that we're looking at, and what we really want to do is hear public opinion about what everybody's thoughts are and the potential for having a winter fishery in Area 7, potentially at the cost of some days in the summer in Area 7. I see Norm has a hand up.
Go ahead, Norm.
Yeah, Kirsten. That Area 7 winter fishery, will they be 3 consecutive days, or will they be staggered so that the signs can be run between the days?
So we haven't worked out all those details yet. It would most likely be that we would open a day and then assess the fishery and then open another day and then assess the fishery. But again, this is still kind of all moving parts and we're still trying to look at what the best option for that would be. The biggest concern, of course, is that if we have 3 consecutive days and we don't have an estimate in between those days, that we would overshoot that quota, that small quota of 600, and then we would be in a payback situation. So that's kind of one of the things that we've been talking about and looking into.
one of the other things, if I could, Kirsten, that we've been
Absolutely.
looking into is as we're assessing kind of that structure of doing 1 day open and then closing for a few days to evaluate the impacts and reopening, we would probably have to think about kind of what quota level we would reopen at, given kind of the small size of the fishery and uncertainty around it. So say if in the first day, say if we caught 200 fish and there was 400 fish remaining, reopening at 400 fish does present a greater risk than the original 600 quota that we had. So we'll have to think very carefully about that and come up with potentially some triggers for reopening.
So can I ask a question about the payback provision?
Yep.
That's something new going forward in NOF, I believe. Will that payback be spread out over the entire fishery? In other words, all areas, or would that payback provision be applied to the area that would go over their quota, so to speak?
It would be applied to the Area 7 quota, so it would most likely affect the following summer's fishery. So it'd be next summer's Area 7 fishery.
Thank you.
And our next hand is from Alex. Alex, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. So Kirsten, I didn't get a chance to hear what those numbers were. It was a little breaking up on my end. What was the quota that you were suggesting for winter?
So it would be 600 fish for the winter fishery. And then that would cause us to make some changes for this Area 7 summer fishery. It would go down to about 1750 with that change, with adding the winter time in. And for comparison, last summer's quota was 1800.
1800, yeah.
So it would most likely end up in a reduction of summertime because of that.
Right. Okay, I'll raise my hand again if I collect some stuff here. I'm sure I have another question, but I want to be clear on it. So thanks.
No worries. We got a question in the room.
Yeah, thanks, Larry Phillips. Appreciate you guys considering this. I know the folks that live out there really are looking for having a while. So, just part of the relative conversation here should be an understanding of the impact. So it looks like 171 impacts, retained fish or encountered fish per still impact there. Are those same 3.5 still impacts reserved or taken away from the summer fishery? What is the associated catch with using the same? Just so we understand, right?
Go ahead,
have an
Eric.
honest, open conversation about what it costs us to have.
In terms of stilly impacts going to the winter versus the summertime. So in the summertime, per a quota of 1, it's approximately a 2 to 3 trade approximately. So for every 2 quota in the summer, you're getting 3. So for every 2 catch in the summer, you're getting 3 catch in the winter. If that makes
So you
sense.
add another 300 fish, that 600.
Wait, hold on.
If you're 3.5, so what is the associated 3.5 still the impacts in the summertime?
Oh, so the associated 3.5 still, or
So
300
in the winter.
It's 3.7 in the winter to have that 600 quota, and approximately in the summertime that would be approximately a change of 427 fish for that 600.
Okay, so it's okay, got it. Okay, that's helpful. I mean, and then the recommendation to have 1 day open. I think all of us that are on the outside looking at this don't want to have a situation where we'll pay that paying back. That's going to just complicate things beyond. And then what about a concurrency with other winter fisheries? So we have them open on the same day. I think we've heard that.
The plan would be the plan would be, and this is of course all up for discussion still, but the plan would be that we would have that fishery potentially in March, which would be or potentially April. But if we did it in March, it would be overlapping marine areas 10, 11, and 5 being open theoretically.
Thanks.
I don't see any questions in the room right now, and I don't see any questions online. Oh, there we go.
And Alex, go ahead.
So where do we, before we model in this winter fishery, where do we stand with our total AEQs, stilly impacts?
Right now in the modeling, we're at just about 95 stilly impacts, Alex. And so as Kirsten mentioned, we do know we have a modeling change coming for kind of some of the coho seasons that were modeled. We would be at 95.5 approximately if we accounted for the October period in Area 5 and Area 6. That'll happen in the next run that we do, that we had feed down inputs into. So that's coming. 95.5 is approximately where we're at.
Okay, 95.5, including this winter amendment for Area 7, but not yet including the coho amendments for 5 and 10, or it does include that?
So right now, just the current set of modeling that we're at. So it doesn't have the winter in Marine Area 7 in there. What we discussed yesterday with the advisors is that to add in that winter fishery in Marine Area 7, we would make an equivalent trade in the summertime. So what we're discussing is that's what Kirsten referenced, the 1750. That's approximately what the quota would have to drop to in the summertime to have that 600 fish in the winter.
Okay, and so the previous question there in the room, kind of, I want to make sure I understand maybe the direction that he was going. So if the ratio that you explained there is how, well, pertaining to the ratio you explained there, so why would we drop 600 out of the summer to get 600 in the winter if the impact ratio is not the same?
I wasn't proposing that we would drop 600 in the summertime. I was proposing that we would drop
400.
2180 something is our quota currently.
Okay. I have my numbers off. Okay, thanks for that, Derek. When are we thinking about making a true formal decision on including this in our package and our proposal moving forward?
Well, I think we'd as we discussed it with kind of a group of the advisors yesterday, I think that today we were hoping that we would kind of get some feedback. I know that the advisors were going to circle up with some of the people that they represented and talk about summer versus winter fishing opportunity. And so kind of the stage that we're at now is that we're hoping to kind of hear some of that feedback and hear back from folks. And then we're gonna take that back and discuss that internally, and then we'll kind of think about the next steps on this after that.
Are you guys able to disclose maybe the current mood that came from, or any initial response from the rec advisors on this?
I think it's kind of a mixed bag. I think that there's some that support it and some that maybe are a little bit hesitant to support it. So I think it's kind of a little bit of a mixed bag, and it's kind of what you would expect to hear from the general public. Like, some people are going to be really into this idea, and some people, maybe not as much. So
yeah, I mean, you got me on a shock here a little bit. So I am myself as well torn, and I know I'm not on the advisor board. To me, off the cuff, it seems like maybe the timing isn't right, and it sucks so bad for me to hear that coming out of my mouth right now, but because there's nothing more that like we want to see our winter fisheries come back. I mean, not even just in Area 7, but 8-1, 8-2, but we know we're a long ways away from that. But to sacrifice potentially an additional weekend, when we successfully had 3 weekends last year, and I was hopeful that maybe even this year we might see 4 in Area 7, or maybe just some additional days versus what we had last year, just for the potential of us seeing 1 or 2 days in the winter. It's hard for me to support that just right away, right the first time I hear it. And again, I know there's some people on this call that might be.
Hey, Alex, I don't know if you can hear me, but I just wanted to let you know that we lost our Zoom connection in the room here.
Okay, Derek.
while you were speaking. So maybe if you could go through that again, and I'm kind of sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm not. I was having connective issues hearing you guys the whole time anyway. So I'm just saying it's a shock, and I really want for us to continue to work on getting us some winter opportunity. But my concern is for us to sacrifice with this next year's quota of potentially seeing an additional weekend in the summer just for 1 or 2 days in the winter, and then risk even exceeding and having that affect us or penalize us in the year to come. It's just it's risky. And I know that some folks on this call or some advisors may be saying, what the heck are you saying? We want winter no matter what. And I'm not sure that if we really sit down and think about it, that the aspect of no matter what shouldn't really be part of our consideration. So at this point right now, for me personally, and without being able to speak to any of my colleagues, it's a risk, and it's not one I'm not comfortable with quite yet. I love the conversation, and it feels like we're moving in the right direction. Maybe the timing just quite isn't right with the numbers we're working with right now. Thanks.
Thanks, Alex. We have a question in the room.
Thank you, Kirsten. Yeah, refresh my memory, Derek, on the Area 7 summer reduction in numbers. How much savings did that get you on Stillaguamish in order to help accommodate that winter?
It would be 3.7.
3.7. That's pretty significant. Just the reduction in the summer. So that pretty nearly pays for the winter.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that's good. I like that kind of move because they're working, with numbers within their same area. So I still agree with the gentleman previously that the risk, is definitely something important to consider in that conversation. Not to get tunnel vision no matter what. That was great comment. So I really appreciate the public joining this call and providing that kind of comment. I just, this number, I really did not expect the state to move on that number for Marine Area 5 from 1750 down to 1400. I wish there were other ways to get down to the Stilly target. I'm a kind of, an Area 10 guy. That's kind of where we make our bread and butter in the charter industry there in the Central Sound. The move from 5216 to 4,000 on our summer quota, that's, this year, that's not really going to hurt us a whole lot because we have pinks and coho. So, it's a move that we have to make to get the Stilly to get a deal. We can accept that. I'm not usually a guy that's, jumping up and down for, to pounding my fist on the table for Area 5 to get seasons, but I wish there was a way we could get there. I've just been doing this for 20 years and I've seen the straits, getting, death by 1,000 cuts over the years. And I just sure hope this doesn't bite them in the ass because the difference is, those guys, their real survival of that town. You've been up there. I mean, it's a destination fishery, and there's not a lot of other things going on, and when you look at most other areas, except the ocean, they have a lot of that in Oahu and Westport as well. But San Juan Islands, they're pretty rich up there for a lot of other tourist activities. And where we are in Area 10, we even do flounder trips sometimes. It's a small fraction of what we do for salmon, but we can survive. I don't know, I'm rambling a little bit here, but it really hurts to see that happen. I just wanted to comment on that. I was sad to see that Area 5 lost that number, and I get it. It's it's one of those time periods where it's a hard hit on Stilly, and sometimes we have to make some tough choices. So that was just my comment. I won't use up any more time on that. And then finally, I just wanted to ask, how we're doing on, well, two things while we're on the winter. The Chum opportunity that was proposed for October in marine areas 10 and 11. Is that still a possibility moving forward? And is it, is it through October 31st? And then lastly, on the winter for marine areas 10 and 11, I doubt we've had time since last night to have any meaningful conversation or feedback on moving that opening date later from February to March. And you guys will let me know if and when you do, but has there been any increase, in the encounters estimate over 2022 to kind of hope that helps that fishery survive better in 2023?
So Carl, your first question, the 10-11 Chum. So I think as of right now, we are planning to propose that to allow Chum retention in area 10 and 11 during the month of October. I don't know all of the details yet. I think we're still trying to, make sure that everything looks good. So I had originally thought that it was going to be based on the ISU Chum opening in general, but that might not be the case. It might just be that it's going to be in the pamphlet as Chum retention in 10 and 11 is allowed the month of October. The impact is really small. The catch numbers are really tiny, so it's not a huge impact. So it's not something that's going to, even with lower predicted Chum runs than usual, it's not something that's going to, really put a big dent in anything. So I think that we're pretty confident that we're going to be able to move forward with that. This next week, obviously, will be the final say on that one. So, but we're confident that that one's looking pretty good. For the winter 10-11 later start, we have that on our list of things to talk to folks about this week. So I think we mentioned last night, we were planning on having some kind of hallway conversations about engaging some thoughts around that one. And that we have not had time to have those conversations yet, but it is something that's on our radar that we are planning to discuss in the next, hopefully day or so.
All right. Thank you, Kirsten.
Yep.
And on the encounters,
I have it modeled as the same effort as last year. So right now, the photos are very similar to last year. I do recognize that for marine area 10 and 11, that those numbers are relatively small, and that probably will result in early closure. So if there's interest in potentially bolstering some of those areas, we would need to move quickly, and we would need to also figure out kind of where we would get impacts from for Stilly to do so.
yeah, well, we did reduce that summer quota, so that did reduce some of our still impacts out of 10, but I don't know that you want to reduce that summer quota much more, but we can kind of look for other areas to look at that. And the other strategies would be, of course, especially if we end up with a March 1st opener, with a February 1st opener again, if we can't get it moved out to March, then I'm sure that the advisors are going to ask for a very cautious approach, a 3-day-a-week opener or something, so we can monitor it closely.
Yeah, we can take in-season management actions for that if that's
that
where
would be
it stays.
great.
Yeah.
And I expect we're going to see fewer. You're going to have a different stock composition. It's probably going to be a fewer small fish makeup than we had this. It tends to cycle.
Yeah, and that we've been watching that encounter rate in 10, and it has not changed since January. So it's been just kind of persistent, same legal mark encounter rate. So it's kind of a weird year in that sense. But yeah, there's lots of in-season management actions we can take for if we stick with the February timeframe.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
And Norm has a hand up. Norm, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to echo some things that Carl was just talking about. As much in the past as I would have liked to see the Area 10 fishery, winter fishery open in February and March, given the challenge we've had for several years now with the sublegals, moving to a March opener probably is wiser than sticking to that February opener. In terms of the Chum fishery, I'd like to see that if we have to carve into the Summer King quota to allow a Chum fishery in October, I'm not sure how well that would go over.
So it would just be it would be during the coho retention piece in October, so it would just be allowing chum retention along with the coho fishery in October. So it would not affect the summer Chinook fisheries in those areas.
Okay. And finally, in terms of the chum fishery, does that include the freshwater tribs?
So this would be just the marine areas. So the freshwater areas would have their own set of regulations that are happening with each of those areas. So that would be, would be done separately. This would just be allowing for chum retention in the marine area.
That's fine, but I guess what I'm asking is, are we pursuing negotiations to allow the tribs to be open also?
That is going to come later and with in-season management, I believe. So I'd have to talk to some other folks about exactly what that would look like, but I can get back to you on that one.
Okay, because I think there's some concern on the tribal side about some of the tribs on the west side of the sound in terms of chum in areas 10 and 11.
Yeah, I mean, there's concerns over making escapement in a lot of those chum runs. So that's kind of what the priority would be. And then anything that's above and beyond that, there's harvestable surplus after that, we're looking to make escapement, then, there's possibility, but I would have to check in with some of those regional folks for the specifics on, different tributaries.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And if you don't have another hand in the room at the moment, we have a hand from Gabe. Gabe, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the department taking a look at that Area 7 winter fishery. As we've heard the past 2 years, all through the North Falcon process, that seems to be a priority for constituents up there. One message that I've been speaking is we need to maximize angler trips and fish harvested, and this appears that we can harvest more fish by moving some of that quota to the winter. So I'm on board with that. And I've heard from several other Marine Area 7 constituents that are as well. I just urge a cautious approach, and I think it's a good step to getting winter opportunity back on the books because it's a priority for those people up there. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabe.
And we have a hand from Zachary. Go ahead.
Hey guys, I'm gonna echo a lot of what Gabe said there. I appreciate the winter fishery on the books for Area 7. I think I'm a little bit concerned with the idea of like a 600 fish quota, just in the sense of like the reopening risk. And I know that's like, I would hate to see a quota that is so small that the ability to reopen sort of like prevents it from being fully utilized. But as I say that, I recognize that actually that's the same thing in the summer when it comes to reopening for those in-season managements anyways. I'm also really happy to hear about the chum in area 10 and 11. I think that's just like in October. I think that's a more opportunity at minimal cost, and that's sort of anytime we can get that, that's a really good thing. And I think that the taking of saline mortalities from both areas 5 and 10 is sort of a fair-ish way to do it, as much as it hurts. Sort of two different areas, and as much as I wish we could all have the biggest quota, the higher quotas, it sort of seems like a reasonable way to do it. So yep, just wanted to say it sort of seems like it's going in a good direction with some of these hard decisions. So thank you.
Thanks, Zach.
And we have a hand from Art. Art, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for from really rolling up your sleeves and taking a look at that Area 7 thing. That's a lot of work. It's very challenging. Just to monitor that fishery is going to be interesting. And to be cautious and not go over those numbers for that payback. But that area would like to see that, and I encourage that on their behalf. I like the way you shape that for now anyway. A secondary, where are we on the tribal inputs? Have we got a ways to go there? Are they, as far as the Stillaguamish goes, as far as that goes, other runs of concern? So Seems to me typically this time of year, we're early in the process. And there's more shaping to come. And I would assume from the ocean as well, because there's a lot of impacts out there, runs concerns too.
Thanks, Art. So I might just give an update on where we're at with some of the inputs. And you are right. It does seem like maybe we're a little bit ahead of where we would be, especially so on Coho. On Chinook, maybe we're about where we might normally be this time of year. So I think as far as kind of some of the tribal inputs go, they were waiting on kind of narrowing down to a single ocean option. That happened last night. I know that concurrently right now, you might notice that there's kind of a few people who would normally be in the room who aren't here, and that's because they're over at a meeting with the tribes. I did get a heads up. I saw in my email, I saw kind of one change to tribal inputs coming through. So I guess stay tuned on that one, and we'll see how the days progress. But the tribes do know that they need to get down on Stillaguamish. I guess stay tuned is the message there.
All right, thank you.
And Kirsten, you don't have any hands in the room, right?
No hands in the room.
Okay, our next hand online is from Alex. Alex, go ahead.
You had said that if we have an overage or an exceedance in this winter, potential winter opening, that it would affect our summer seasons in the following year. Can you elaborate on how exactly that is structured? Or is there potential that it could also have in-season effects on the following summer fishery?
So the proposal, because it's winter, so it would be basically March or April of 2024. So the potential would be to affect the summer 2024 fishery.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. All right, thanks for clarifying.
And we do have one question in the room before we get to our next hand online.
So question is, this is Brandon. The 350 fish out of 5 and the 1,200 fish out of 10. So what was that move exactly for?
That move, there were a few reasons. It was we were thinking, of course, mainly about Stillaguamish, but we were trying to make a move that also helped out on some of the other stocks that we think are still of concern. The main point of that move was that we were trying to go from approximately 100 Stillaguamish mortalities in the last set of runs to 95 Stillaguamish mortalities. We still think that we're in the range of needing 92, 93 at the end. But we were trying to make a step that was closer to that, given how the northern fisheries had come in and seeing that we were, just taking a look at where we were at. So Stillaguamish was the main one, but of course, for Stillaguamish, you can take kind of those changes in several different areas. We're looking right now, and we think that some of the stocks that are, so maybe just to walk through some of the Chinook stocks, we're really concerned about Nisqually right now. From what I've looked at and trying to think about what the next steps might be in the future, it looks like for Nisqually, if we aren't thinking about Nisqually as we're shaping our fisheries, we're gonna be at a pretty reduced in-river fishery. Last year for Nisqually, we had quite a reduced schedule there. And if we aren't kind of cognizant of Nisqually changes as we're shaping our marine fisheries, we're gonna be at a reduced river fishery relative to what we were last year, would be my best guess. So that's kind of one thing that we're really thinking about. On Skokomish, that's one area where we haven't had too many conversations with our co-managers yet. So there's still kind of, we still got to figure out what we're potentially doing there. But what we're preliminarily seeing is that Skokomish is very likely to still be above its objective after we make Stillaguamish changes. So any changes, we want to try to avoid making changes for Stillaguamish and then having to take and do extra changes for Skokomish. Particularly kind of two other stocks that we're looking at. Snohomish is one that kind of, when it's all said and done, it also looks like it might be exceeding objectives. There is a little bit that we can take out of the in-river there, but trying to see if there's a way that we can avoid a full in-river closure on Snohomish Chinook. And then the last piece that's a little bit up in the air is Nooksack Springs, and same kind of consideration. We're seeing if we can potentially save the in-river fishery they have on the North Fork there, and also kind of what changes we might need to make in the marine area for that. So given kind of those 4 stocks that we were looking at, we started with Nisqually and Snohomish. Snohomish actually has some of its largest impacts in Marine Area 10, as does Nisqually. So we made the change there considering that. The other consideration on Marine Area 10, why we made the change there was for the quota that they had, which was relatively similar to what we have in the model now, what they had last year. They were one of the marine areas in the summertime that stayed open the longest. So so those were kind of the considerations that went into Marine Area 10, doing something that helps Nisqually, helps Snohomish, and then also maybe is a little bit less in need of that bolstered quota relative to say Marine Area 7 or Marine Area 9, or even Marine Area 11, which had quite an early closure last year. For Marine Area 5 in the winter, it was there were a few considerations there. The first thing is that Marine Area 5 in the winter was basically the location where per quota reduced, we got the biggest positive impact on Stilly. But aside from that, Marine Area 5 in the winter is really the one of the only marine areas where we could go to make changes that benefit Nooksack Springs. That's where the vast majority in the marine area, that's where the vast majority of those Nooksack Spring impacts are. Additionally, kind of as we were looking at kind of where the Stillaguamish AEQs are distributed, in the last set of model runs, Marine Area 5 was the area that had the most Stillaguamish impact. So that was another consideration as we were kind of moving through that. The one thing about changes to Marine Area 5 that we should be cautious about is that there really is not that much benefit to Nisqually. There really isn't that much benefit to Snohomish and some of the other stocks that we've been looking at. So kind of on next steps, we should start to get thinking about what those might look like. But depending on kind of how discussions on Snohomish or Skokomish and Nisqually shake out, maybe 2 places where we could potentially look to next might be either Marine Area 6 in the summertime was one that we discussed in the last public meeting. Marine Area 11, once again, that's a place where taking out quota is more painful than some areas, but a place that benefits Nisqually. So maybe a little bit more information than you wanted there, Brandon, but trying to be transparent and let folks know what the thinking was. I see 2 hands raised in the room.
Go ahead, Larry. Oh, you go ahead.
So just a question, when you're talking about Snohomish Chinook impacts, are you speaking specific to say summer or winter, or are you talking about the whole year for the run?
So for Snohomish, they have the run there is a combined summer fall run, and I'd have to go check what the representation of that stock was, but it is for the combined run. It is for both the summer and fall that we're trying to estimate impacts on. Sometimes in our coded wire tags that we're using to represent certain stocks, sometimes there's only a release of a specific type. So you might get a summer release that represents both summer and fall. But on Snohomish, I have to confess, I'd have to actually go and look at the tags to get a better understanding of what we're using for representation there. Larry?
Well, I'm always going to jump back to that. What is the cost of the fishery, right? So when I think about Nisqually, the first question I would have is, what does our current sharing agreement look like with specifically Nisqually in river fisheries? And I know those are challenging and sensitive negotiations that happen. So I appreciate that. But I also think about how we're leveraging impacts and how we're using those relative to different fisheries. The closer to the terminal area you get, the higher per encounter impact you're going to have on the stock you're trying to protect. The challenge with Marine Area 10 is we've got surplus hatchery fish coming back from Tumwater Falls, Mare Creek, Coulter Creek. You've got a lot of those other fish there. And so I guess I would ask, when we do the analysis of where we make cuts, do you have those information available to us so we can have a conversation about, what does the end of the day look like in terms of you're trying to save 2% in Marine Area 10 versus in the river itself. But I can talk to Gabe about this as well on the sport side in the river, but.
Allocation is, maybe I might start with the allocation piece. Allocation is a very touchy subject, especially when we speak to our tribal co-managers. I have to be very careful in what I can release to the public when I look at pieces like that. Sometimes when I'm looking at allocation scenarios, I have to look at a different range of treaty options and where treaty might end up. And when you presume what the treaty fisheries might end up at, you get yourself into trouble. But what I will say is that I think that there's a very high chance that we could, without changes to in-river sport, I think there's a very high chance we'll be above 50% on the allocation of Nisqually. So I have been looking closely at that. And on your other point, that's something that we are weighing up too. And folks might notice that as we've been thinking about changes to marine fisheries, we've also been thinking about coupling those with, in some cases, quite substantial changes to freshwater fisheries. It's all a balance. We're trying to, of course, cater to a range of user groups, but how can the marine fisheries make a contribution, but in a lot of cases, probably a large percent of where this difference will be made up will be in freshwater.
Well, I appreciate that. That candid response from dealing with the tribes. I understand the challenges, you know that, but it just gives us a currency that we can look at and make a decision about what the best approach is forward. It's so we can give you the guidance that we want from the sport fisheries.
I'd be happy to circle up with you after, Larry. Sounds good.
Could you just update us on what macaw winter troll fishery is being modeled right now?
Yep, it's at 8,500. We know it needs to come down. Of course, that's very painful when we're looking at the current modeling to our stock exploitation rates. That's why kind of in the tool that we've been working with, we know that there's pieces that need to change for Stillaguamish on the tribal side. Folks have probably noticed, but I look very closely at what's the change to the total exploitation rate, what's the change to the non-treaty mortalities, the pieces that we're kind of more in control of. And like I said, I do run scenarios on the side. So.
Thank you.
So if they're at 8,500, what kind of savings do we get if they drop 1,000 fish? How much savings on Stilly are we talking per thousand?
I'd be happy to chat with you a little bit afterwards. I think I don't really want to go too much into this direction in the public meeting. It's a very dangerous thing to do.
Okay, fair enough.
I think we have one more question online. Leah, you were cutting out, but Norm, if you can hear us, go ahead.
Now, can you hear me?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay, switching over to the Skokomish. I'm behind the curve this year because I've missed quite a few of the meetings. Are we talking about a problem with the kings on the Skokomish? Or are we talking about silvers?
We're talking about a problem with Chinook, Norm.
About Chinook?
Yep.
Okay, so do we have a commercial fishery scheduled? A non-tribal commercial fishery scheduled?
In Marine Area 8?
No, in Marine Area 12. I believe we put a beach seine fishery in there several years ago.
Sorry, Norm, I don't know. My brain must be running slow today. I thought you said Snohomish, not Skokomish.
Yeah, Skokomish, that's what I'm talking about.
Yep, we do have a beach seine fishery model, 5,000 fish at Hood Sport.
Okay, so is that option in play also to meet our is there a potential of dropping that fishery to help the Skokomish?
That fishery, because it's right at the hatchery there, I think it has, I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure it has no modeled impacts on Skokomish.
Really? That's surprising. Next question on the Ackley Area 12. Are we looking at the potential of potentially opening up a fishery to for springers and for sockeye?
Well, I guess I would see maybe that's a question for Mark when he's around, but I do believe I do believe in the Puget Sound Harvest Management Plan. I do believe we did agree to a set of dates that would kind of allow that we could fish in Hood Canal. It should be in the Skokomish Management Unit profile. I can send you that document if you'd like, Norm. But
do.
there's kind of a regime that we've agreed to on when we can fish in there.
Okay, so, and that's in the 10-year plan?
Yes,
Yeah, if you could send that to me, I'd appreciate it.
I'll send that your way now, Norm.
Thank you. I'm done.
And we have another hand from Alex. Alex, go ahead.
Thank you. Back onto of course, my hot topic, the Area 7 winter opportunity here. If in the event that we did not meet that 600 fish quota, with the payback program, and I just want to make sure I have this clear. I didn't understand everything completely earlier, but with the payback program, would we see that potential quota go into the following year, the following summer? How does that work?
So you're saying that if we catch less than 600 fish?
Correct.
Yeah, there's not like a transfer that way. So as far as I know, like it would just, you just don't. Yeah, I mean, like we had, last year we were about 50 fish shy of that quota. So it's not like we're adding 50 fish to the quota this year. That's, but
Yes.
the payback.
I understand that. Okay. I don't want to make any enemies into this process. And I understand that, again, our advisors are probably hearing some support from various groups and constituencies. I do want to make note to anyone on this call, and then anyone can make comment, yourselves as well, that I would say the likelihood of us seeing a 1 to 3 day opener in the winter and then seeing our PSA chapter push pretty hard for having a derby during that opportunity needs to be recognized. And we need to understand that that might very well limit the success of that opportunity, and being that it is risky enough as it is right now, that if we see a derby put into there as well, then that could be dangerous. So that'll be all for me today. I appreciate you guys bringing this up to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. And with that, I don't see any more hands online, and I don't see any more hands in the room unless anybody has a last minute comment. All right, so I would say in the meantime, there's been a lot of discussion around this Area 7 winter fishery. For folks that want to, voice their opinion that did not get to jump on today, feel free to send me an email. You guys know how to find me. You can send me an email, send us an email, let us know what you think. We are going to be soliciting comments. The comment portal is still open, and we will be back here tomorrow morning. I need to confirm the time for tomorrow. There's been some meetings shifting around, so the time might move up to 8:30. And if that happens, we'll get a blast out to everybody via email and up on our website and social media. So thank you to everybody who joined us this morning. Really appreciate the time, and we'll be back at it tomorrow.